How are you, Terry?
Good.
Always good to see you. We're back at it again this week.
I love it. Here we are.
Alrighty, well, let's get into it. Welcome to the Wolf and the Bear podcast, an educational spiritual podcast starring psychic medium and channel Terri Groom, and me as your host, Sophia Sterling. This podcast is created to bring real spiritual knowledge channeled straight from the source or straight from our own experiences without ego, and as Terry says, with love and love first and wisdom second. As always,
Absolutely.
we've got Terry in the house, our resident wolf energy. She is the #1 psychic medium and channel in DFW area, and she's a published author of Altered Grace and featured on Netflix's Haunted. I am forever her student of the craft and rocking the bear energy. All right, let's get into it. What
Let's
is
do
going on with
it.
your
Let's get
day?
the party started. Absolutely. Well, usually I say, happy day. Today's up for grabs. I'm feeling
Yeah.
it, Sterling. It's up for grabs.
It's kind of, I mean, not to be this way because you and I know like astrological energy is something, but it's not everything. But we are in a weird time where we have an opposition between our sun and a Lilith energy, which is kind of challenging because it highlights a lot of obsessive energy. It brings up a lot of self-doubt, but sort of a delusional relationship with self-doubt. So sometimes that even means ignoring it or putting it aside. So that is actually where our energy is today as of the 11th of March, and it's going to sit that way for a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of us feel a little weird about our own energy.
And that's a good way of putting it. It is a little weird. For me, I try to stay in a very upbeat, optimistic mood. And today has been a little bit zonky. It's going in and out of that feeling. So there's definitely a little something in the whether it be the weather or the air or the astrological, profile of things. But it's okay to not always be at your best. And I feel that's really what my point of this is for the listeners in the audience is it's okay not to be 100% all the time.
Yes. Well, I mean, the reason we're shooting this later than normal was I had my therapy today.
I love it.
And what was funny was I did my makeup before therapy because I was like, all right, I got to get this and then we're going to shoot right after. And then I'm crying. I'm like, all right, well, there goes that. I got to go fix that. It is what it is.
It is. It's real people doing real things. I mean, I totally get it. I watched my cat, and I know this might be too much information for the listeners, but I watched my cat come out of our litter box in my office, and I don't know what happened in there, but something very different. So I now have the most incredible wet clay paw prints from here all the way to my kitchen. And I thought, yep, happy day.
You're like, I love it here. This is why I'm here for sure.
That's exactly right. It's like, oh my gosh, it's okay. It's okay for the day to be up for grabs. But the best part of it is you've got all day to decide which part of the day you're going to make the best.
That's
an
interesting
it's not always
point.
great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, talk about our perceptions last week.
That's right.
And that's cold comfort when you look around and it looks really gray, but
Yes.
It's going to be gray regardless of it.
Well, that's a good point. And today, we woke up with 2 gray skies, a little darker than average because of daylight savings time. I mean, we could have stayed in a bad mood all day, or we could still stay in a bad mood all day.
Yeah, the jury's still out. We get off of here.
Exactly. The sun's going to shine. And so if the sun's willing to come out and play today, I guess I should be as well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to change my mood later on today.
Or don't.
Or don't.
Oh, listen. What was it like? You always say this, but whenever something's not going great, you always just say I'm having a very human day.
Yes, human day is right. Times 2.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I'm curious about this. I think maybe the listeners would as well. Some people say that we are in close connection with our people that we love and we're close with, right? So there has to be a sharing of energy. So yes. I shared with you off camera, but yesterday I had a pretty bad day. It was pretty much all my fault, blah, blah, blah. But I wondered, because I had an old friend and she used to do this, but I don't know if this was like a manipulation tactic or if it is real. But this was years ago. But she always used to say, well, like she used to reach out to me and say, are you okay? I'm having this crazy day. I don't think it's me.
Ah,
You know what I mean? So I worried when you said, oh, I had a weird day. I was like, I wonder, I hope that wasn't me to you. But then I also have certain beliefs
no,
about hygiene, energetic hygiene.
exactly.
So, okay, I was curious. I was like, because I was
And
worried.
I am not the proponent of, if I'm in a bad mood, you should be too.
No,
I'm never
right.
going to be that person. And I do see a lot of people looking in that direction. It's kind of like, if I'm going to be in the mud, so are you. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
feel that. My goal is for you to be in a better mood than me, so that I can be elevated, or vice versa, so I can elevate you. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I get it.
Oof.
Happy
Did you?
day.
We were, but just to keep up with what's new. So you and I were both at the psychic fair on Saturday. So
Yes.
how'd that go? Was it a good day?
Oh, amazing. Amazing people. I love them all. I had the
Yeah.
coolest thing I've got to tell you real quick.
Yes.
And I never reveal names, and don't reveal much of readings, but this was so cool. I had just a lovely client sit with me. Love her to death. Just a great lady. And she's having some struggles with blood clots. And
Mm.
her sister in the spirit world came through. And because I never ever filter anything, and I always say what I hear, sometimes some very weird, wacky things come out of my mouth. Well, her sister's very zany in the spirit world, and as she was in the physical world. And she said, well, if you just drink some tomato juice, those things wouldn't happen. So, of course,
Oh.
I just throw that out on the table, right? And I'm laughing just as well, okay? Because I'm thinking, okay, let's do it. So later on Saturday night, I went ahead just for kicks and grins, and I started doing a little research on the value of tomato juice, and I actually found something that it prevents blood clots. So I thought, well,
Are
I'll
you
be
serious?
darned. You never know.
Oh my gosh.
So isn't that a powerful yet fun message,
Well,
from
yeah,
the
but
spirit
now I'm
world?
curious. Okay, because so did the sister know that in life, or is that like I've died and now I have access to new information energy?
Well, what's really interesting is she was a little off the beaten path in life.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't have been out of the ordinary for her to say things, but oftentimes she just says things because it's kind of what she's in the mood for.
Yeah.
And so for her to say this, and I'm thinking, well, she's just in the mood. But again, I said, well, she feels this will help you. And it's up to you. Free will's an amazing tool. You can either check it out, run with it, change it, whatever you want to do. But I'm a curious soul, my nature, so of course I had to research that. And I
Yes.
thought, what a brilliant statement. Her
That's so
sister was right
cool.
on point. I love it.
No, I love that.
So it was a great day. I had a wonderful day with a lot of wonderful
Good.
people. Yes.
I thought it was a really solid. I felt that the last fair I'd been at, it was really dense, and I felt like yesterday was, or not yesterday, Saturday was a little bit less dense. It was at least a little bit more balanced, especially because it
Yes.
started with a little bit of anxiety in the air.
Well, and I agree with that. It started off a little bit to where you had to take that extra gulp of air to get going.
Yes.
Traffic was strange for a Saturday morning, and it's kind of yucky outside. So yes, we needed that little extra pizzazz. But I
Yay.
do one other thing, and I've got to share this too. I had so many fun experiences Saturday. I had a mom in the spirit world who chose to stand on the side of me because you couldn't figure out where to stand at one of the round tables that we were
Is that when you got the
seated
chair?
at.
I
So,
knew that was so funny.
and I kept saying, "You can stand by your daughter. It's okay." She said, "No. My kitchen table always had four corners. I don't know where to stand."
Oh,
And so I was trying to be loving, and even though I was laughing inside, thinking, "Oh my God, that's funny." So she kept standing and leaning on me on my left shoulder, and at one point, I kid you not, I could feel her picking lint off my sweater. And so I said to her daughter, I said, "Your mother is picking lint off my sweater." She said, "Oh my God, my mother used to do that all the time."
oh,
She
that's
said she'd
so
walk up to
funny.
someone and start talking to them, and then start picking on their clothes.
And grooming
So,
them. Oh,
validation.
wow. That's so wild. Well, can I ask you, so when that energy shows up and is, like expressing that awkwardness, but there's also this awareness of like, we will talk about this later, but you and I will know what I'm talking about. When we ask them to come through the door,
Yes.
once that happens, they're not like acting, right? Like they're that inner. They're like, I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know where to stand. Like that's just very real. Like they're not doing that so that it
No.
feeds back to the person the correct way. That's what I thought. Okay, cool. Because I was just
No.
curious about like how calculated do they understand that they have to be, or is that the nature of it, where they're like, I do this anyway, and then you repeat it, and that's the validation function.
Well, and that's where people get stuck sometimes. I have a lot of really, really good friends and colleagues that they've asked that question, how are they supposed to behave? And my take on that, quite honestly, is however they behaved when they were here, expect the
Mm-hmm.
same in return. Now, if you reach them solely up into the upper echelon levels, the highest levels, they might be more of what I call the kumbaya experience, which is the
Mm-hmm.
very balanced collectiveness,
And
which
not
is
as
more about,
helpful.
yes, they're all loving and wonderful, but ultimately, if you come to talk to your loved ones, I really get the impression that you'd kind of like to know mom hasn't changed much, at least while she's talking to you. That
Mm-hmm.
dad is still the same, and your snarky sister is still snarky on the other side while she's visiting with you. It just keeps it more realistic, and it keeps it more authentic.
Mm-hmm. I real quick, I have a question because I just love asking you questions, actually. But
Oh.
so this always happens to me, but I think I have a connection issue, not a connection issue, but it's not quite so streamlined for me. But the I always get like from the other side when they get concerned about their bloodline, they'll just shout
Hmm.
out, and it'll always just be, I'll just ask, who's the second oldest grandchild? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And like that's just all, and maybe I might get a gender, maybe not,
Hmm.
but it's like it almost every time that's like they're like, oh, I'm worried, or there's something actively going on with that energy. But I don't
Yes.
hear it the same way you do, where it's like a full, like, it's not conversational as much as it's a personality for sure. You can kind of
It.
feel what they like to joke about and stuff. But more than anything, they're kind of like X points the spot. I get to that point, and
Hmm.
then they start kind of sharing what they feel about it, or maybe
Yes.
what that person needs. But
Exactly. And the wonderful thing about it is that no two energies are the same. So however they come through, we kind of meet them where they are when it comes to energy. I had one the other day, a wonderful experience with this lovely lady that I was reading, and she had 5 people we were talking to. And so I couldn't keep them straight because 4 of them were sisters and one was a brother. And, that's a lot of sisters. So I said, listen, let's make it real simple. And 2 of the sisters had passed and they were with us. I said, let's keep it real simple. We're going to number you all 1 through 5. And
yep,
I'm not going to struggle about which number is which. You're going to
yeah,
help me by giving me the numbers so that your loved one, your sister here with me, the living sister, can figure you out. So I told her, I said,
wow,
okay, get ready. Here we go. Pick 1 through 5, put them in order of birth. And that'll be easy for her to know. So she did in her head, and I said, "Don't tell me because we're going at this hard. Let's do
I
this."
love that. Oh my
And
gosh,
so it was like 3 is living and 3 is needing to do XYZ according to number 2 on the other side.
oh
And so it
wow,
was a game. It ended up being really informational, but it also ended up really kind of being what the person on the other side was about. They were
hmm,
actually someone who liked board games and like, those little scramble grams and things that just got their mind working. And so this
hmm,
was a wonderful way to interact. And so it was a
that's
lot of fun
wild.
for all of us. I was having a blast.
Dang, that's so cool. I love that. Well, and they're just kind of reminding me, because before I met you, I had an interaction with somebody named Marcel Cairo, great person,
Hmm.
very gifted in mediumship. That's kind of his thing.
Hmm.
But when I was there, my dad hadn't passed yet, so I didn't have anybody on the other side that I thought I needed to talk to, and wound up his mom came through, which then between you and I, she came through as well with us.
Yes.
But what was weird was just, I don't know why, but we did an exercise where there was a chest and a bunch of random stuff in it. And I was supposed to talk to this grandmother that I never met, figure out
Right.
what's in the box.
Ah.
And like by the time I was done, I had a little whiteboard and it was like full. And I flipped it
Hmm.
around. He was like, is that all the things you think are in here? I was like, I think I might be crazy, but yeah. And then things checked out.
I
And then I
love
just
it.
completely forgot that for the longest time, because in my mind, I'm like, was that a you know, fever dream, and then fast forward to now, and it's like, oh, that's kind of cool because I do remember that in hindsight.
It's really cool.
Mhm.
One of my most favorites, and I love just overall, I love talking to spirit. I love working with clients. But I'll tell you, when I have someone in the spirit world who's chatty and who's very engaging, there are times where I completely get lost that I have a client with me, because the person in the spirit world, their loved one, their friend, whomever it may be, is so engaging and so just chatty that this energy and I are just having at it. And I have to be
Mhm.
reminded that I've got someone that needs to have, feedback as well.
Is that when Brutus taps you, or who
Sometimes, well,
reminds you?
sometimes the client will
Oh,
tap
yeah,
me.
that's a good
Like,
point. Yeah, yeah,
wait, that's
yeah.
my mom. And we'll be talking about things like, oh, you can too. I can too. Oh my gosh, let's talk about what you're canning. And then I have
That's
to
so
remember to
funny.
include, obviously the person who brought them.
Do they
But
ever linger whenever that reading, especially like on the weekends when the readings are super short? Do they ever keep wanting to
yes,
talk to you? You have to say,
yes.
"I'm so sorry." Dang.
Yes. For me, what's interesting, I do private readings in my office in Richardson, and while I'm doing that, there are more often than not, if I have a regular that's coming in that day, I will start seeing the loved ones that will come
Mhm.
early, and I'll have to say to them, "You can't really hang out with me. I've got
Yeah.
two more clients. You got
This
to
room's about to be
wait."
busy. Yeah.
Exactly. And I've had one, actually. I was just finishing up some paperwork and their loved one was about 45 minutes from being, there. And so I was just doing my admin work in my office, and I kept hearing, "Where's my chair? Where's my chair?
Oh
Where's my
my
chair?"
god.
And I stopped and I'm like, okay, where are you? And I knew it was a male. And one of my clients for that day was coming in, and her son had passed. And
Mm.
he loves my chair, my zero gravity chair I use for healings. And so I kept saying, "Where's my chair?" And I'm like, "It's here. It's I just haven't pulled it out yet." So I pulled the chair out, and I was actually visiting with him before his mother
Oh,
came.
that's
And so that was
wow. What do you
very,
talk
very
about?
interesting. Well, he was familiar. He was actually he was a bit of towards the latter part of his life. He didn't like to leave the home because
Mhm.
he had so many medical issues, and a
Mm.
lot of them were just very traumatic for him.
Mm.
So his one of his biggest things was he was free, and so we had to coax him to recognize that now he could literally do these things. He could go to the gardens. He could go for the walks. He could be where he wanted to be, and he wasn't confined. So he took that very seriously and ended up at my office ahead of his mom,
That's so funny.
which was really sweet, actually. And when she walked in, I said, "Do you feel something?" She goes, "Oh my gosh." I said, "Uh huh." So I
Oh,
pulled the chair out and I
wow.
reclined the chair for him.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. That's so interesting. Well, there was one thing when I was first, what actually led me to this, talk about the weirdest way to get into metaphysics, but was watching, somehow it's popped up, Larry David. Who's that? Is that like the older, some like talk show host that's like so old. I was like, I didn't even know he was still with us. And then this young medium, Tyler Henry.
Uh huh.
So I
Yes.
start watching all his stuff. But there was this one thing where there was an episode, and I think it might have been dramatized, or maybe he's just young and still figuring out how to guard himself better. But he
Hmm.
was like sobbing in a car for this client coming up, saying he was like feeling a lot of this grief and stuff. Has that ever happened to you, or you just have really good guards against that? 'Cause I've
Well, I
never
typically,
experienced it.
and that's a really good question. It really is a good question. It's very interesting. It comes on a perfect moment too, because I had that last week. I had
Really?
one, yes. This was a very sad, very difficult passing for a lot of reasons. For reasons I can't even begin to tell you. But I did. I started crying and I choked up, and I never
Was it
do that.
physical or emotional? Was it like betrayal and stuff, or like just
It,
body stuff?
no, this person did not have an illness whatsoever and
Oh
had
gosh.
help leaving the earth,
Okay.
unfortunately,
Oh dang.
by people he should have trusted. So I have him, and
Oh.
he's still searching for, again, I always call it the labyrinth, even though he's not really in it because he didn't really do it. But it's still, I know it's a very convoluted, very confusing situation. But this was a soul who was finding his way, and I broke down and cried for him, and I
Oh.
told his wife, I said, "I'm sorry, you're just gonna have to give me a minute here, because this is very difficult. And just so you know, he's fine in the spirit world, but there are so many things surrounding his exit that I just really feel for him, because he's a very honorable soul, and he doesn't want to share all the facts with you because he doesn't want you hurting.
So, you will break this down at a different time, but so when you can, he's in the labyrinth, but like it's undeserving, or he's only halfway in.
Well, he chose it. He
Okay.
chose it to keep quiet. He chose it to cover up something that would have been even more painful and even a little dangerous.
I see. So he's choosing the self-isolation
He's
thing.
choosing to sacrifice his exit. When I knew, and based on everything that I heard from him, he was very reluctant to talk to me because he didn't want things to be difficult. So we got some of it out, and some of it was validated.
And that's a free will choice?
It's a free will choice.
Oh, wow. Well, I guess everything is, but that's so weird.
He chose to let others believe that he had actually participated in his exit.
And he hadn't. Right. Oh my gosh. Well, I had a weird thought at the fair that I hadn't thought before. I actually was going to ask you about it. I'm going to start a list of questions for Terri, and it's just going to be, that's our intro. No. But it's about this topic, because it's like, so if you have a day of readings, because I had a person that couldn't cry for themselves. And then, I was upset last night, and I was like, I just need to cry, because I have beliefs from a biological perspective what crying can give you. Yes. And then I also think it's important to feel the feelings, because I spent a lot of time not doing that. So not an easy crier, felt it a little bit last night. And then at Saturday, I was like, is there a way that I could cry for somebody? Right? Because we receive so much grief. And then can you help move some of that energy when somebody else can't? And they'll never know. But like, somebody walked away, I remember just thinking, I wish that somebody could cry for them, because would be honoring what they're dealing with. Well,
and you're such a loving soul, and I completely understand why that would be a question that you would ask. And I will tell you, I feel the same way. There are many times that I wish I could take the pain away. Not that I, haven't had enough of my own in the past, but as you work through pain, you recognize that there's methods, there's ways to alleviate some of the heartache. Mm-hmm. And so I understand what you're saying, but we also want to keep in mind we've got a little bit of a dilemma as a metaphysical worker, is that we can't take their free will. Yeah. They may be coming here, through whatever contract, and maybe this suffering is actually going to bring them to the next level of their life. So we can't say that what they're doing with their suffrage is right or wrong. Now, what I can tell you, and I have said this to clients, I say, with your permission, I would like to think about this more. I feel you need to grieve, but you're not prepared to grieve. Mm-hmm. If you will let me light a candle for you, perhaps maybe we can open up the pathway to help you to heal. Ooh. So what I'm doing is I'm offering time and love, right? Love first, wisdom second. But I'm not doing it for them. And I do understand the need to cry for someone. And I know that that's an extremely noble, very heartfelt position for you. And I love that you do that. And I love that you would even think to ask that. But be mindful, they may not be able to do that. Or it may take the one thing that's going to change their life away from them. Yeah. Tears are a magical, mystical expression of energy. And unless you're balled up in a corner, and that's what I tell my channeling students, unless you're balled up in a corner, hey, I'll just go get some more Kleenex, and we'll be good to go. Tears are a way of releasing the body from toxins, from pressure, from emotional drain, physical drain, from a gamut of sources. So yes, we can cry for them, but we also don't want to take on their pain to that level either. True. Well, and I know that normally we just pick out of a bowl like what our stuff is, but I love this topic. Let's I love it too. With this. Let's run with it. Oh my gosh, it's going everywhere. What a good day to go everywhere.
What's hilarious about spirit is it's doing its own thing. We're just here. We're
Oh, it
riding it,
is.
not the other way around.
Well, it's so funny because I just, when I set up for grabs earlier, now I've got that phrase stuck in my head. So my team, Brutus, is messing with me. He
Oh
he
no!
just showed me the, again, the 7-Eleven, I love you, just so you know. But he just showed me all the grab and goes. So we're
Oh,
grabbing topics and we're running with them. We're going with them because
I
that's
love
what
it.
the audience needs,
I
or at
agree.
least that's what we need,
I
and
agree.
that's pretty cool.
Well, so from a biological perspective,
Hmm.
this is what apparently the literature's showing. And it's basically mostly through Jordan Peterson and Andrew Huberman, because they've both come together and agreed on this through research literature.
Hmm.
But basically, the whole big thing with mushrooms right now,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and from the medicinal perspective, and I mean
Absolutely.
that whatever that means to another person, because we recognize this is very up for grabs for whoever is
Right.
using them.
It is.
But basically, what they were saying, the best way I've ever felt it was described was the mind and the choices we make and the knee jerk reactions of emotion are
Yes.
like, imagine a ski slope, and then you go down the slope. So now there's a groove. And basically, trauma, habitry, all those things,
Hmm.
you just start going down that groove because why would you do otherwise? All the other
Yes.
stuff, it's fresh snow. It wouldn't make sense. Then before you know it, you're having responses that you don't like anymore, but they're still there. So this guy talked about mushrooms and basically saying they're finding that it creates elasticity in the brain to where it's like a fresh snowfall.
Yes.
So under
Hmm.
treatment and psychological therapy, talk therapy, and care, you can sort of shift out of certain negative behavior, thought patterns, or even behavior action patterns with this fresh snowfall. But the
Yes.
crazy part is there's a natural version of that, and it seems to be autonomic sobbing.
Hmm.
So it's basically like they're basically proving that that same fresh snowfall thing on the brain is true after a really good cry, that it
I
actually
love it.
allows your brain to be more malleable. So when you
Hmm.
come out of that crying, maybe if you're able to get into an analytical place, you're like, well, whatever just wrecked my world to the point that I cried and really couldn't stop, or I let myself cry and sob and just have that
Hmm.
heaving.
Hmm.
Um, it's crazy because it seems to be true that is actually, it allows your brain to let go of the groove that got you there to some degree. And what's even weirder is when we sob, that like when we
Yes.
we double take. So apparently, and I've never really done this consistently, but that action, if you just do it like I just did now, even though I'm not crying, it completely lowers your resting heart rate and
Yes.
your cortisol. So like you can get stressed out and go in the bathroom and just and like double breath in, out. And apparently that like, so your body knows what to do when you're just sobbing over a breakup or sobbing over a lost job. And your body's already knowing to do the two things: breathe crazy, which makes us all feel like children. If you've ever sobbed, you're like, I can't even breathe right. It's
I
annoying.
know.
Like I've
I
lost control of my
know.
life, lost control of breathing. I'm breathing like an idiot, but then your body's actually doing what it's supposed to. And the tears. Now,
Hmm.
I don't know. You just said something. This is what I love about you. Amazing. I don't know what you mean. What do you mean? Because I know that I believe that. I don't know to what degree. So when you said tears are this magical thing, it makes perfect sense. They'd have to be, and we're springing a leak. You know what I mean? The
Yes.
emotions are so much,
Exactly.
but what else is an aspect of
Oops,
that?
just a second. Let me shut my other phone off. I've got two of them, and sometimes they get loud. Sorry.
Two phones, Jones.
You get two phone Jones. You know me. There we go. Um, okay. They are magical, and I truly feel that way. And what you said, actually, you gave me validation, because one of the techniques that I do, and I do it oftentimes involuntary, is when I'm meditating or I'm trying to get someone to a place where they're meditating and they're feeling like they're getting further, into that state of mind. I'll do the like you just showed me.
Oh,
And so it's interesting. I used to get in trouble when I was in England doing my work, my trance healing, because I always said stop. But for me, it actually helped me to go deeper. And then of course you can't really do that to come out of it, but maybe you can. So I get that. That actually is validating. So thank you. You just gave me some
that's so
information
cool.
I
I
needed.
just remembered that too.
Because I love it. I do that probably once a session, whatever I'm doing, and I'm like, whoa, that's just, I guess that's just me, but it feel better afterwards.
Well, it's something. So if I remember correctly, we kind of are a human in general. We're bad at breathing now. So apparently, we actually never breathe deep enough.
Right.
And like older heart rates or older breath rates were like crazy. Now we breathe so quick. So it's something about when you breathe in once and then you breathe in again, it fully expands the lungs and it makes you kind of panicky. I don't know why.
That makes sense.
And then you let it out. Something about that extra expansion into that trigger of like that nervousness and then the exhalation of it's almost like it's tricking your body into doing that in small doses because you're already panicking out here.
Right.
Or, I don't know what any of that means, but
very, very fascinating. And there's so much discovery. You could take, the act of tears, and you can find so much to research and to see and to use to help others, and so on and so forth. I love tears, and to me they are magical and healing. And as you said, you're giving me some very just organic feedback too. Thank you. That I'm not the one with my nose in the books. I try to get most of my information from my guides. And they're actually I Brutus is one of my guides, for those that don't know. And I Brutus just asked me a question. He interrupted you. You didn't hear him, but I did. He was going, Terri, why is your hair so yellow today? And so I've been a little anxious about it. It is yellow. Do I have yellow hair?
No.
So I'm going to ask my guide, I Brutus, don't do that.
Yeah. What?
So I'm sorry.
No.
Keep it real, folks. That's what's happening. But, again, I know that we cry for others, and that's a form of solidarity. It's a form of love and connection and respect. But we have to be mindful that we don't overdo it for others, because there are those that truly need to experience that when they're ready. And and I know you're extremely intuitive, and so when we're doing our work, sometimes we just have to say, today might be that day when you let the emotions come out a little bit, and maybe later, make yourself, depending on who I'm sitting with or you're sitting with, make yourself a cup of tea or get yourself something to help you to relax, and do a little soul searching, because tears are a good thing. Now, I do also want to say something, because you mentioned mushrooms, and I want to tell you, there's so much synchronicity in our world. My last client of the evening last night, which was 9:00 at night on a Sunday.
Jesus.
No listeners and viewers, don't do that to me again. But 9:00 on a Sunday, I was happy to help. But, oh gosh, here we go. Mushrooms came up. It was the primary topic of discussion, and I find it interesting that you brought that up. I am not going to say yay or nay. I'm not going to be that person. I've heard some marvelous, magical stories of the success with that. But I'm also going to remind you all that there are many instances where it is illegal. And so choose carefully. We don't want you to have an amazing trip and then having amazing lockup afterwards, okay? So use your gifts wisely, use your availabilities wisely, and remember, just because it's legal one place doesn't mean it's legal everywhere. So that's just something to throw in the mix as well.
And to piggyback on that as well, from two things you said. One of my favorite things about you and I is that I'm an internet sleuth. I'm reading rabbit holes, and you don't. And that's what's so fun is like the other episode, I had to describe to you like what this NPC theory that was going on was. And there's something so cool about that, because that's a built-in guarantee that whatever response you have to any of this is authentically, like when we say in the intro, like pulled from source or our own experiences, because you can't have a previous opinion on that. Like you didn't even know it existed. I like that. It's kind of cool.
That's true.
We make a good team.
We do, and I love the fact that you're patting me on the back for being stupid.
No, I don't. Well, I don't think it's stupid, because in my world, I get, I'm sitting here I get more frustrated because I do see what I think is like not great information. So it's lovely that at least like there's purity, there's this like innocence to, you didn't know that people are saying this crazy stuff, like, and it was funny to kind of see you get a little bit hot about it, but in a nice way. But no, anyways, to the anything, I mean, any of the psychedelics, right? So there's a reality to this, and we can go into it a whole lot deeper because it's not from a medical perspective because we don't know. Neither of us are doctors.
No. Mm-mm.
But for a spiritual perspective, I will say this. Whenever somebody in my readings comes in really hot and heavy, preaching, not preaching, but maybe preaching
Mm-hmm.
about their experiences or how game changing it was or whatever, it's interesting to me because that is an experience that is sort of given to you on a platter, which is amazing. And it is
Yes.
sometimes for some
Yes.
people the
Mm-hmm.
evidence they need to believe that there is a metaphysical reality to the world.
Yes.
But we also recognize that anything that is curated with low levels of effort have a tendency to over time either be misremembered, misunderstood, or misappropriated the importance of. Because there's a reality of like
Yes.
this knowingness that sometimes is achieved. It can be confusing if you never came to an understanding of why knowingness would be important, because you have this crazy experience with ayahuasca or with mushrooms or whatever, or LSD, and then you can't ever get back to that because you don't have a desire to get into a more meditative state or have a more
Right.
close connection to those things that kind of reveal themselves in that moment. And then I think what's kind of curious is it's both beautiful because it makes people get curious and investigate,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also dangerous because then you get, well, I want to feel not alone again. Everyone talks about the connection of
Yes.
ayahuasca.
The
And
oneness.
I'm like, that's amazing. And I remember asking you what your opinion was years ago. And you kind of hold the same opinion I have now after much later, where you can sort of come to that without the drugs.
Right.
And then you get to go there whenever you want. So just something to
Exactly.
think about. And again, you know me, I'm here for a good time, not a long time, but there's certain things that you can't get too connected to when it comes to spirituality. It's kind of a false light over time.
Well, and yes, and I agree with that. The thing that I have, again, to share with this, anytime you can find within you, as you mentioned, the ability to go deeper, to go closer, to be one with spirit, that is a gift that cannot be taken from you. It doesn't require outside influences. It doesn't require someone standing over you like the magician in the room, hopefully making sure that you're not, hallucinating beyond control. But again, for me, as you can well imagine, knowing me, Sterling, it would be very hard for me to let someone have that much of my control.
Have you
Someone
ever
to
done
be in
anything
the
like that?
room. What's that?
Have you ever done any psychedelic drugs over
No, I
time?
have not.
Oh, wow.
And the reason why, well, let me take that back. One time, once upon a time, um,
Ooh.
in the land of Oz, when I was 17 years
Listen,
old, and I was experiencing what marijuana was. Okay, they can't arrest me 40, well,
right.
say how many years later, but I was experiencing it, but it was laced, and I didn't know that at the time. So
Oh,
that did put me in a little bit of a what do they call a PCP trip. So I
no.
so I did experience what it's like to be able to see, I mean, I'm a gentle soul, so I didn't see elaborateness in the spirit world. I saw Mickey Mouse and Snow White, and oh my gosh, I thought, seriously? Is
That's
that what
so
I've been
funny.
missing?
Yeah, clearly, you're right. Oh,
So
wow.
I have, but it's been many, many years. And again, and I'm not. In fact, there are people that I've talked to, and listeners and viewers, you probably some of them, that I've said, listen, if this is what you wish to do, go for it. Some people do have amazing experiences. Some people don't get anything out of it. But what I do hear that I don't want to hear, but I know exists, is the fact that I have clients that will say, I've done this experience. Oh my gosh, I need to go back and do it, but they can't seem to find the same book again. Do you see? They don't go through the
Mm-hmm.
same chapters. They don't go into this elation that they just, it's the cornerstone of who they are, but they can never find it twice.
Well,
So,
yeah, and you said something amazing. I'm sorry, I just interrupted you. Go
no,
ahead.
you're great. No, you go right ahead.
I'm trying to
Interrupt
get better
away.
at that.
It's my motto,
Um,
remember? Interrupt.
well, so the other thing too is, I will never forget this because it was a client of yours that sat with me after. It was one of the original fairs over at your office, and I remember like asking you about it later just to compare notes on some level because we're
Mhm.
colleagues. And I was like, what was that about? And she had just gotten back from like an ayahuasca thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you said to me, you said she's having trouble getting back into her body.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other component too of some of these things is we do, sometimes there is a little bit, some people call it drop. There's definitely a chemical component as well. If you do go down that rabbit hole, just don't go, like take a day off from work, like make sure you're in a place to rest after, because it is not, you are leaving your body. And the harder the drug, the harder you leave it. And it takes time to get comfortable, get back in, not feel so sensitive.
Yes.
It's kind of like rattling a snow globe. You kind of hope everything lands back where it was, right?
Oh my gosh, I love that analogy. I'm going to remember that. Can I steal that one and use it in some of my classes?
Everything I am, you create.
That snow globe. I love that. But and again, maybe it's because I have some deep trust issues, and it very well could be, and I'll own it. We all have something, right? We're not perfect.
Oh, geez, Terri, how could that possibly be so? Both of your parents were so trustworthy.
I know. Can you imagine that? Trust issues coming from me? But I would never, and just me, okay? Now, everyone, don't get in a tizzy here. It's not meant, I'm not talking to you unless I am.
Right.
I just would never go into a situation personally where I felt that I would be out of control and some stranger who just took my credit card is going to watch and make sure I don't die, or watch and make sure I don't run out of there with no clothes on. I'm just not going to give someone that kind of control, that kind of responsibility, really. I mean, I wouldn't take that responsibility and offer it to my clients. I wouldn't say, listen, give me your all and I'll do my best to keep you safe. So I personally, I just don't see the draw. And that's what I always hear. Well, don't worry, someone's going to watch me. Yeah, I bet they are. And you don't know if they're recording you. You might be the latest, greatest on YouTube now. You're acting a fool.
Damn. Yeah.
So be careful, be mindful, do your experiences, enjoy them. I don't have a judgment on it. Just keep yourself safe while you're finding you. How's that?
Yeah, and that's the end of our drugs are bad. Okay.
No,
I know. People know what that reference is. There's a South Park bit about that. But you know me well enough to know, I'm not a prudish person when it comes to certain details of life. But yeah, there's a responsibility there.
Sure.
I wanted to double back on something that we were talking about sort of with the tears. I don't know why, but that keeps kind of being something really powerful to me. And there was a movie that I went and saw by myself. It was amazing. But Dune 2 just came out. Love sci-fi. That's my thing.
Okay.
So in it, there's this Arrakis. It's the dune planet where water is super scarce. So they save it, right? The natives are very, and so what that has wound up doing is that they actually perceive crying to be the highest honor, and they'll say things like, "Don't waste your water on that," or they will really highlight and memorialize that they are crying because that water will go nowhere. You know what I mean? Like nobody will sustain off of it. It is technically wasted, and you can't waste water in this desert planet.
Right.
So I thought that was so beautiful because it is actually maybe the physical, obviously your body gets hot, other things happen, but like as far as a thing that encapsulates sadness, whether it's sadness for yourself or someone else, or it is the physical embodiment of that in a way that I can't really think of anything else except the heart constrictions that are so painful. You know what I mean? But like on a physical level. And so in the movie, this woman who basically becomes quite powerful psychically, she starts feeling the pain of her matrilineal ancestors, and she starts crying, and he basically is like, "We can't waste the tears on this. This is your new reality." So I wonder, where do you think it became so common that we hide them so much? Because I only got comfortable with crying recently, and I still don't like it, and I still don't really do it in front of other people if I can help it.
Well, there wasn't early on. There was a stigmatism of if you were crying, that meant that you were weak, and so that was personified in my generation, where and we've all heard someone in their my age having raised sons say, "Don't cry, you're not a girl," or "Don't man up, don't shed tears." And
I'll
to
give
me,
you
that's
something to
always,
cry about.
yeah, not exactly. I'll give you something to cry about. Really, you just told a kid to stop crying, and then you're saying, I'll give you something to cry about. I mean, how confusing childhood is. But more than anything, I do feel that people try to make it seem like it's bad because people are uncomfortable because they don't know how to respond. They don't know what to do when someone's crying. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes I don't know because sometimes running in for that big hug isn't what they need. Running in and comforting them with that hug is the opposite of what's really happening there. Sometimes someone crying just needs to cry. That person just needs to experience what it is to release energy. And if you're releasing energy and I got my arms wrapped around you and I'm squeezing the bejeebers out of you, how much healing are you doing? So sometimes we do have to have that time alone, not alone. I don't mean go isolate and hide under the bed. Been there, done that. But go to a nice balanced place. Go into your living area, your bedroom, and just sit and cry. If you cry in front of other people and it's me, I'm going to give you Kleenex. I'm going to ask you if you need anything. And if you're not looking like you're shaking, I'm probably going to let you be. I'm holding the proverbial holding space, and I use it too. I do hold space. I want to just be there if you need something.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. There's such a stigmatism, and it's so unfortunate. I feel very honored when I have a male who is in tears. And I'm not saying, oh, let's have at it. There's a difference between you and all the women. I simply know that your upbringing, probably if you're, in my age group or you're not in the last two generations, you probably were raised with someone who said, don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So eliminating that stigmatism is such a refreshing, honoring thing to do. So, have a good cry. I personally hate to cry, which is kind of funny that you're talking about. I do cry, but I hate to cry. I'm one of those people, and there's a small percentage of us. We can cry for 3 minutes, and then for the next day and a half, our eyes are bug eyes. We look like we just ate the frogs because they're
Oh, I
this
know.
big,
Oh, it's the
and you can't
worst.
see out of them.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I know a good crying is a great thing, but I also know for me it's a bottle of Tylenol and some hot compresses for
Oh, yeah.
days.
I
So,
used to when I was in a significantly more depressive state a long time ago before therapy. But like I used to cry all the time, and it got because I'm Asian, my eyes would just be so swollen. And then I would rather say to people, "Oh, I'm just," because they'd be like, "You look kind of rough." Like I'd rather tell them I'm hungover than that I've been crying. Because why would I tell them that? I'd rather them just think, "Oh, I'm like them," or I'm with the crowd with my
right, you want
behavior.
to be relatable.
Oh, then admit that something's going on and that I can't even control how puffy my eyes are because I can't control that I'm crying. And I think it is a control thing. You and I
Yes,
both value control because we spent a lot of our childhood without it.
right.
So
And
there's
that's
a
true.
there's a good reason for us to not be the most comfortable with that.
And that makes sense. And going back to what you said about making an excuse that you'd rather tell them that you were hungover rather than tell them that you've been crying. Think of the scenario that would take place. First of all, if you're with someone in your age group, not always, and again, I'm not being stereotypical or stereotyping here, but say you say, yeah, I'm a little hungover, then usually what you're going to get is, cool, had a good night last night, huh? Yeah,
No
good,
one
all
asks
right.
questions.
High five it. Whoa, me too. But if you say, well, I had a good cry last night, you're going to hear, oh, followed by a lot of cogs in the brain of theirs going, do I say something? Do I ask what it is? Do I not ask what it is? I wonder how long it is. And did I create it? Did they create it? What's happening? Are they coming back to work or not coming back to work? Are they my friend or not coming back to being friends? So what you do is I can see that it does create a little turmoil in the receiver because the receiver doesn't know whether they should, start asking why.
Yeah, and well, right, that is complicated because you
It
don't
is.
want to force people to carry your own stuff,
No,
but
you know,
also, yeah, that's complicated.
and when I hear that and people say that and they're not coming to me for a reading, they're not coming to get information, they're just kind of saying that, like, hey, how are you? And then I hear that, which time to time I do. Some of us are really good at, great, how are you? But sometimes people will come out and be authentic, right? And they'll
Mm-hmm.
say, yeah, I've been real upset crying. I always say to them, you know, if you need to talk, let me know. Or
Mhm.
sometimes we got to do what we got to do, because I can't. Yeah, I don't want to necessarily. If they were crying over their boyfriend who's only cheated on them 35 times and they're still working through,
Mhm.
I want to still have empathy, right?
Mhm.
But I also know that maybe crying it out and getting swollen eyes is the only thing that's going to get them to stop crying. So
Mm.
again, I don't have, if they're not sitting in front of me, I don't, obviously, and I'm not judging them either. Don't get me wrong. But oftentimes, like, if you need to talk, great. I'm here. I don't usually go digging. I don't go, oh
Mhm.
no, what
Yeah.
happened? Unless there's someone that's used to me doing that to them. Then I will.
Right. Well, let me ask you this from a mind's eye perspective. When you look at somebody's energy and you can tell that grief is a pretty significant element of their vibration. Like, where do you see a shutdown in the chakra system? Do you see like how does the aura start to look to you?
For me, a couple things happen. And I'm very grateful, and I'm very honored that I have a pretty good built-in system. And
Mhm.
remember, I
You
studied
came by it
energy.
honestly.
Yeah, I studied energy nonstop. My survival was based on how well I could track people. Okay, I'm kind of like a human. How do I put it? There's a term for it, and I just lost it. Maybe I wasn't supposed to say it, but I'm a human tracker, really. In a lot
I
of
just
ways.
told Felicia about our first episode where I said, like, you learned the English language at the same time you were learning spirit language. That's
Yes,
so rare.
it is. It
With
and it,
drama.
it's a
But
lot of drama, but oftentimes I can pick it up instantaneously. I may not know the causation, the reason for it, but I can figure out that something is up. And so
mhm.
it's then I can go a little further, a little deeper. Okay, is their aura compressed? Is it pinned to their head like cellophane? Is it not glowing and knowing? Is it just real tight and murky and muddy? Uh, are they walking? Again, even body language. If we're talking about it from all angles, are their shoulders slumped? Are they standing straight back, or are they leaning forward? Are they slower than they usually are? Or are they faster than they usually
Do they
are?
sit down holding themselves?
They sit down and they wrap their arms around themselves. And again, body language is, we can't tune out body language.
Mm-mm.
That's why so many times in my classes I'm like, okay, and I didn't really do this with you. I didn't have to. And I probably should have, though, just for fun. I bring blindfolds. I'm like, no, you're not reading the body language. You're gonna read just what you know from up here in energy. But I do. I don't want to just look at body language. I do want to look at it from what we are created and designed to do, which is to feel the human side of them, feel it for them.
Mhm.
Um, what I do oftentimes, and I do feel that in people, I feel that their resignation to trouble, their feeling of
Mm.
giving up, sometimes their feeling of being just kind of left out to dry, or put out to dry, as some people will say. And from there, I always ask Spirit, what's our step? What is our step? I can't solve or resolve in a 20-minute session or 30-minute
Mhm.
session or an hour session, but what can I change in energy right this moment as we progress, so that this person at least can identify for a moment with something different?
Mhm.
And you've seen me do some pretty stupid things. Like duck. Well, you didn't see me duck walking down the wellness expo one time, but I had a client who was very depressed and wasn't leaving the house, and she had just come out. She used to be very social, and had been working through depression, but she was medicated and treated and psychotherapy therapied enough where she needed something just to do. She needed to
Mhm.
be. She needed to come out of her shell. So her and I duck walked the entire length of the Wellness Expo one day.
Oh.
And so, we must have looked like, well, ducks, right?
Right.
That's what our goal was. I'm
You're
sure
trying
we
to get your
fulfilled
ducks in a
it.
row.
We were. She was right there, and we had to walk behind, and then we'd go on the side and behind. But what we recognized, and what I knew from what I had been told to do, was she needed to expose her energy. She needed
Mm.
to show that she was confident that she mattered, to expose herself into energy. And by the time we finished that duck walk, and I will tell you, I never saw her again. I don't know if that means anything, but she was she wasn't my client. She was someone I met at the Wellness Expo.
Yeah.
And so by the end of it, she looked at me. She said, "And not in a million years would I have ever thought I would have done that." Thank you.
Oh.
So, and you saw me doing a little bit of my shimmy Saturday,
Yeah, I
because I
did.
needed to get that person from a state of just kind of uncertainty. This is someone who's got a lot of energy, and this is a person who can get stuck if she doesn't get her energy in alignment. So her and I had to do the shimmy to my table, because we know that's the root chakra, and we know sometimes the shimmy is going to help you reset so you can get the information you came for, rather than kind of just brewing in what you think that is. Okay.
Interesting. So you're basically saying, well, that's such a big topic, but like, okay, so when if you recognize that there's a possibility that you might spend 30 minutes talking into a vortex of pre-understood energy,
Yes.
you try to reset their root chakra, and then what
Yes.
does that do?
It gives them a
Why
little
did
bit.
that change it?
Well, anytime that it's just like anything, when I've had a busy day, and you've probably done the same thing. You come home, you stand by the counter, and as I get older, I have to hold the counter now. I used to just jump at the center of the room or walk backwards. Those are all resetting.
Oh,
We
interesting.
Yes. So we recognize that we can reset our energy. We can ground ourselves. We can reset the root chakra. And when we do that, and there's a whole lot that, our listeners and viewers are going to be able to hear in discussion of chakras and all the other fun things. But if you can do that and kind of get the root chakra to just kind of balance and to hear what's being said, rather than being kind of, in that state of, okay, this is what I know, this is what I
I'm
feel,
rooted.
that I'm not going anywhere else.
Is the root chakra, does that, I don't see, this is the one thing, like, I never really studied that stuff deeply. So it's like, is the root chakra, does that have governance to some degree over the unconscious, or not really?
Sure,
Okay,
absolutely.
gotcha. Okay,
All the
that makes
chakras
sense.
do. You know,
Oh, yeah.
I do feel that it has again, it's your foundation. It's just like anything else. If you have a house, you have a foundation to the house. The stronger the foundation, the less the windstorm is going to do damage, because you're strong and sturdy. Well, the same is with the foundation of a human body. If your foundation is solid, then there's least amount of damage that can be done to the psyche, to the emotional, mental, physical, and soul level. So it is
Wow.
important. All of the chakras are important, but we recognize that I can't sit there and before I get to a table or before we start something, get them all doing deep breaths, or have them
Mm-hmm.
hum, or have them do some
Right.
deep breaths for the sacral, the solar plexus. So I usually make it real simple, and I try to make it fun. So
We we gotta at some point talk about that too, because I just realized this is the first time in a long time I've heard anybody speak about the root chakra in a positive way, which tells me there is this collective demonization, I think, of the root chakra, because I didn't realize until just this moment where it's like, oh yeah, there's a lot of, this is good, because a lot of people
it's
lately are talking about it like, well, if you're acting out of the root chakra, you're acting out of all of the issues that are wrong with humanity, basically. So it's kind of getting this bad. Anyways, that's
ooh,
another topic for another
wow.
time.
Somebody's got to always go in and ruin things, don't they?
Well, it is, it's fear. Fear is going to do a lot to a lot of topics, always.
Exactly.
And this is metaphysics are hot right now. We know that.
Oh, I know. Well, and they are hot, and they're hot in a couple different ways, good and bad. I'm glad that there are
Hmm.
those that are learning and discovering, and also questioning. They want the answers, they want to hear it, they want to know it. But then there's also a subset of people that are out to destroy it. They're
Hmm.
out to take it and make it into something that it doesn't exist to be. And that by, as you said, making it evil, or stupid, or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of thought right now running through the community as far as what is it that it truly is. But no, the root chakra is not your enemy.
No. Well, so when we talk about, when you said that the energy, is it compressed? Is it, and you also mentioned like a muddiness or a murkiness
Mhm,
around it.
mhm.
So when people encounter Eric Weinstein, he was actually talking about suicidality, but really the lesser form of that we're discussing, is he was talking about how it's such a big space, grief, sadness, all of that. And
Sure.
it's different because one can be situational, right? Someone dies, you get a
Absolutely.
breakup. Some can be that sort of the wave-like thing where you haven't processed all of your childhood, or you're about to have to go do something and it stirs that up. And then
Hmm.
that manifests as grief.
Sure
But
does.
anxiety, sometimes if you can't find out that it's grief, but more than anything, grief over something that you haven't figured out why it was unfair or what to do about the fact that it was unfair. And so then, and then you also have like the grief of not getting what you want. So not even the loss of something you've had, but the loss of this idea that never even was manifest, but now it's gone. So we have all these different versions of it, but at the end of the day, when we like in the aura, I talk about it this way. I can't remember. I think you were the one who said this or something around it, but when we have an auric field, right? And it is comprised of all of the things that we are currently. And that
Yes.
means all of our current hobbies, all of our current music. So we lose something. So there's this gaping hole in our energy, this absence of something that's now gone. And people, I always say, it is so hard to fill it with the stuff that we already have knowingness of. And how do you tell somebody that is in the middle of grief, oh, go find a new hobby, go find something foreign to you and bring it close to you? Well, that doesn't feel good.
No, it
But
doesn't feel good.
in breakups, there's this thing that people do, and it's, well, you have to get under someone to get over somebody. But on a spiritual level, and obviously I think there's a lot of pretty grave issues with that process of healing grief. Like, I'm not advocating for it,
Right.
but it does make sense because you have this completely foreign thing to you, and you can kind of puzzle piece it in.
Yes.
And now all to some degree, it's like a Band-Aid on a bullet wound for your energy.
Yes.
And so I think that's one thing I wish people understood about grief from a physical level to then an energetic level. You're dealing with two different losses, right? You're
In many ways.
really, you're dealing with the physical loss of this thing or this person or this idea that you can't have access to anymore. But then you're also dealing with the absence and the unconscious recognition that you are somehow energetically less than you were before.
That is the perception, right? And which is unfortunate because most times it's actually to your benefit to be away from this person. Or, if we're talking about relationships that have been broken, I'm not talking about grief from death or that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what's so remarkable about it is that we do leave blueprints in our energy, and the auras are more of the what's happening in the here and now. But we recognize as well now, if you are having a joyful day and you're elated in the moment, you're still going to show in your aura that there is a little bit of the past that's still there, that's still resonating in energy. Now, I don't expect to have an aura picture done, at my age, and show my childhood. Now, there is speculation, and again, remember, I'm always about, hear what you can from your people, but I'm not the most read person. So what you must understand is, I'm sure there's someone who would bust this idea all to bejeebers, but I don't believe that stays in your energy. But I do believe that there's evidence of that in your energy, but not necessarily detectable either with the naked eye or with some of the cameras that are used solely for that type of aura photos or imageries. So yes, I'm going to say yes, it is pretty much in the now. It is the picture is what is happening in your life today. It could change tomorrow. Tomorrow you could be, road raging all day, and all of a sudden now you're getting a little bit of red, or it's murky, or something's changing. And so we recognize it is kind of a blueprint, but it's also kind of a paper trail. So I don't know if that makes sense to you, but
I think it does. When you say blueprint, so if somebody loses a loved one to death,
right.
let's say there's no dumb, like, I chased the wrong person a million times, which we've all done it, but it really is just a pretty cut and dry. You had something you really loved and now it's gone,
Right.
and there's no greater lesson. so far as you know, it's just life, right?
Exactly.
Where does that, or like, because that's sort of that vacancy I'm talking about in the energy, where it's like there's not, you can't fill that with
No.
anything really. So there, and I do believe that there's like a time related, a energy related healing of that is a slow process that nobody wants to deal
Right.
with, because we'd rather feel better. You know what I mean? Like, oh
Sure.
my gosh, to ask somebody to wait for that to heal is a lot, especially someone in the middle of grief. What do you suggest? What is the thing that one does, in your opinion, from a metaphysical perspective? Obviously, talk therapy, like we can go do things in the physical world, but is there a different way to perceive that loss that can help us honor it without feeling the need to like make it right?
And that's a really good question. And there's not a simple answer for it. There are many answers
Mm-hmm.
for it, but most of them aren't just a simple way of moving past it.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at grief, and this is again, this is a topic that's likely to come up here and there throughout our discovery here. We recognize that the human mind, the human energy, the human thought, um, can take on a lot of different worries and in mindfulness at one time. Now,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm driving at is trying to get the thought towards, envision, if you will, for a moment, that the energy that surrounds you, that is you, is much like a honeycomb. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
we recognize, if we've ever seen a honeycomb, for those that don't know what I'm talking about, Google's an amazing thing. Honeycombs have many little cells. Okay, it's one piece of what looks like wax with many, many little cells, little holes, little cells. And so in what I do, in the way that I perceive grief, is that we have this wonderful, block of us, okay, with many different components for ideas, for grief, for relations, for happiness, for all the different emotions. Now, if we put it in perspective, we realize that yes, grief exists. We have grief. And sometimes it feels like the entire honeycomb is just grief, which is more of
Mm-hmm.
a mind thought than a mind than actualization. So if you look at each one of those little cells as being, this is my grief in here. I've got this in this honeycomb, in the comb, and I have this and this and this. So how do we work away from that? Well, first we have to realize just that grief is a human experience, and it doesn't have to apply to everything you do in life. That it
Mm-hmm.
deserves its own little compartment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, I can't tell you to go find a hobby to eradicate the grief in one of your honeycomb cells, right? Because
Right.
I can tell you to do that, to find something to do. If you're sitting home and the only thing you do is stare at the blank wall and suffer, then absolutely we're going to duck walk down the expo. Okay, you and
Mm-hmm.
I are going to have some fun. We're going to go do the shimmy shimmy. But what I'm driving at, and it's multifaceted, is that there's so many moving parts of grief. First, we have to recognize that we are not grief. We are not
Mm-hmm.
just grief. Okay, that we have grief in our energy from our situations, from our experiences, and all experiences teach us, whether we like it or not. They're all learning curves, learning experiences. So if we have these cells that have grief in a metaphysical study, now again, I'm a lay person. I'm not a medical person. So don't come after me, medical community. Um, I look at it from what I understand through my work, that we have to kind of go to that one cell. We have to realize first it's just a little component. It's just a little itty bitty you. Okay. Now, if we can kind of get you to see it that way, there's a lot of times we're not going to actually be able to just release the grief. It's going to be part of us. Do I still have grief from my upbringing? Sure, I do. Is it something that I deal with every day? Not really. Did it mold some of my personality? Sure. And I don't have another 100 years in this particular body to sort all of that out. Okay, so and I'm getting far away from the question you're asking me.
Well, no, I love it, because you just touched on something I'm curious about personally. Do you ever get, because it does still affect you, because we've talked about like the sleep habits that you and I both
Yes.
have from our upbringing.
Yes.
Whenever you have that iteration where you wake up and you're like, I know the only reason I'm awake right now is because of this experience I had from my childhood.
Yes.
Does that make you angry sometimes where you're just like, I didn't even do this to myself and I'm
No.
wide awake?
No.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. I'm still at the part sometimes where I'm like, I'm frustrated.
Well, what I want to say to you, and I get that. I mean, do I get frustrated? Oh, you bet. If you've ever seen me deal with road rage, you know I get
Yeah.
frustrated. But what I've done, and you're right, what you're referring to is the episodes of PTSD in the middle of the night, where you wake up and everything that you've ever felt, that feels, and it might even feel repressed at the time in the middle of the night, feels very repressed. But we recognize those instances. They do that's grief from the past that's coming in to go, hey, here I am. And I'm all about, I'm a firm believer people need to go and go through their journey, getting help, getting resources, getting the best them that they can get. Let's make this energy great, so that next lifetime, that's one lesson we can check the mark, check mark
Hmm.
off, right? But we realize that no matter how much we work at things, sometimes our subconscious, it wants to kind of, level the playing field,
Do its own thing.
do its own thing. And so, yes, in the middle of the night, is it necessarily grief that hasn't been eradicated, dealt with? I'm a firm believer. I'm gonna give grief each instance one back massage. Okay, I'm gonna massage it one time
Mm.
before I put it in the cell and go. You know what?
Hmm.
This isn't for me. What happened to me isn't me. I've recognized for a long way, that things that were wrong. I I'll take responsibility for what was my part. But really, I mean, I'm watching a movie, and it just happens that I'm
Hmm.
the main character. And
Mm.
so doesn't mean that I'm reliving all these things. It just means
Right.
that I know the movie exists. So going back to that, and reliving it in the middle of the night, grief exists in all of us. And I truly believe, excuse me, it's the level of, and the heightened level that some of us get to, and even us in the middle of the night periodically,
Hmm.
that we have to be kind to ourselves with, and say, hey, I know that I'm 60 years old, and at 60, I'm still every now and then going to have the thoughts of a 7-year-old. And I'm
Hmm.
not going to belittle myself for feeling that. I'm
Hmm.
not going to nurture it in the sense of, I'm not going to go, oh, good, let's do it tomorrow too. Right? I'm
Right.
simply going to say, I love that 7-year-old. I'm not going
Hmm.
to beat myself up over this. I'm going to have an experience, whether it's 2 a.m., 3 a.m. with PTSD, whatever it may be. I'm going to live through it, and then I'm going to get my butt back to bed. Because the
Hmm.
adult me is not really accepting the fact that I'm up and doing this. Okay.
I see what you're
Does
saying.
that make sense?
It totally does. Well, and to use your honeycomb thing, it's like I don't know why I'm seeing it this way, but if each one's a room that has the potential to have a lamp on or off,
Yes.
it's like, well, the grief like lamp can be lit, but like also so can the other ones that are still comprising your life.
Yes. Bingo. And that's really, see, you just summarized that in such a lovely way. I love that. And I could visualize that. You're right. Having a grief light, I love that. And what I love about that is it's a lamp. How cool is that?
Mm-hmm.
Lamp gives light. So
Mm-hmm.
in these little compartments, these little cells in the honeycomb, you're right. You can have lights on in the good places and also in the bad places. If I spend
Mm-hmm.
my entire time, trying to eradicate the things in the bad places, right? Then am I fulfilling and adding to the good places?
Right. Well, ooh, and this is something I realized as I say it is I have to be careful of this. I think other people probably do too. Like once you go into the compartment that has the lamp on, then you're like, well, while I'm here, and then you start turning the lamps of other things that like maybe they are grief stricken, but like they didn't need to be turned on. You
Right.
turn them on because that was a thought form that you thought was maybe going to be healing, but really, to use an old thing that used to say, the seam ripper, when you try to
Yes.
go and just like investigate all the pain and all the suffering and you have no plan of how to get yourself kind of back. So that's the other trap of the, oh my God, we've all done this. When you're maybe in a breakup or you're just crying and suddenly you got to go find a mirror to watch yourself cry. And it's just this human nature thing of like, let's see how sad I can get. Like,
Well, and that's
you
true. And just
know,
remind me never ever to give you a mirror for Christmas, okay? No
oh
mirrors for
man.
you.
But no joke. But it is one of those things where we we want to sometimes we get led to, we want to know that our grief is important.
Yes.
So then we just stare at it. Because we want to know, we're like, we'll make sure it is paid attention to. One thing that I've been doing to help myself with weird outbursts of that is I've been writing it down.
I love it. Good.
And trying to, and not even what happened, but just making note of the day so that I'm honoring what it was and what happened, but I'm not like writing a blog post about it. But it's one of those things where at least I can admit it happened. It made me feel weird and uncomfortable and vulnerable, but I don't have to go look at that all day today, but I did notate it happened.
Absolutely.
And that helps because then at least I don't feel like I've ignored it, but I also don't feel like I need to go look at it. But I also know I'm doing the right work to know that at the end of the month, if it's a bunch of days of issues and it's named, like I know what it was that day that bothered me, at least I have some data points to understand on top of it. And that way you can live a functional life. You're still paying attention to and giving space for that grief to be identified and particularly named. Because if we can name it and figure out what's going on, it does help us. Because sometimes when that grief is completely unnamed, it just feels overwhelming.
And, that's well stated. One thing I'd like to add to that, and again, I'm not an expert by no stretch of the imagination. I mean, really, can you imagine that? I probably wouldn't make a very good therapist, actually.
I completely disagree.
Well, but we do want to give it a name, but we don't want to give it the glory. We don't want to use it down the road as something that we can rely on. So if I say this happened because, I was foolish enough to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, then I could use that as a negative badge of understanding. I could use that as, okay, well, I'm not very good at discerning things. I do stupid things, and I'm going to go park in, 10 o'clock in the parking lot of this abandoned building because I do stupid things. So we don't want to use it as a badge of understanding and awareness of something that isn't good for us. So when we have instances and we grieve over things, we have to also, and I love the fact you're writing that down. I think that's so important. I'm a huge proponent of getting it out on paper. But when we're getting it out on paper, I also am a firm believer in showing an opposite side of this, which is the gratitude side of it. I may have had this, but I learned that. So for me, I use the other as the strength. So I may have been foolish, but now I'm wise. I may have been vulnerable, but now I'm strong. And so how do I pad that? How do I magnify that? I do that by finding things every day to be grateful for. And when you're grateful for something, you recognize that somehow or another, it does kind of dim the lights in the rooms that grief exists.
Oh man, well that's such a good point. Yeah, you're spot on, because if that's the fear of grief, if grief had a persona and the fear was that it would be ignored,
right,
then that's one of the best ways that you can acknowledge the importance of it.
Yes.
Which seems to be the conscious fear of grief itself.
Right. Exactly.
Because it doesn't want to be missed. It doesn't want to be unattended to.
No, it doesn't.
That's so interesting. That's fascinating, because that's so right. You're giving it by being grateful for what it, and again, it's so hard to do when something is fresh.
Right.
But like if you're able to, that's you're answering the one call that subconsciously your grief is wanting, which is attention, but also empowerment. And
man, you're right. And you mentioned something earlier about the seam ripper, and I truly feel that we've got to be careful of that. Now, I once more, I don't want anyone to think that I am saying anything derogatory or negative about therapy. I have really no skin in the game about saying anything that would be oppressive for them. I know a lot of great therapists, and I love them all that I've worked with. So, quite honestly, kudos to you all. But as I go a little deeper here, my take on it through a metaphysical approach is I don't want to go in with someone that I'm working with, life coaching in particular. Go in and go, okay, well, you've got this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, and let's go ahead and get all that out of your system. Let's get it done with, because you may not just have enough stuff to replace it with. You may have really only fixated your life on having negative things. Your whole life may be wrapped around your grief. You may have had grief from childhood to teenagehood to adulthood, and now you're, in your elder years, and you still haven't made peace with it. Well, I'm not going to go in and rip it from you and say none of these matter, because quite honestly, you built a life on them. It may have been a house of cards, but you still built your life on it.
Yeah.
And so we've got to go slow. We can't just go, okay, your grief doesn't matter now, get over it. You're done it. It's 50 years ago. We have to be more receptive to what is it showing like in you? What are you about now? What changed in you to make this, you? And, then we look at, again, the attributes and the things about us that do make us amazing and wonderful and loving and great. And there's always something positive about everybody, even the most malicious, mean person. If you look deep enough, there's something behind it that's positive. So the seam ripper, that expression, folks, is really about, don't go in and try to don't burn down the house and rebuild it. We're trying to show that there is empathy and there's compassion and love and respect for grief, but we don't want to build the rest of our lives on it. And so we have to go and find out what the good is so that the bad can go in the compartments, in the honeycombs, and we can leave the light on if it makes you feel comfortable. If you have to go stumble back every now and again to go visit it, you can see where you're heading. But remember, there's a lot of other lights on. And wouldn't you rather be happy than sad? That's a choice. And sometimes people will say, I'd rather be sad as familiar. So what's your familiar? And I'm not talking about your kitty cats and your owls. What's your familiar? Do you want to be happy or do you want to be sad? And also for all you viewers, there's a lot of light around me right now, and I could tell you what it is, but instead, I'm just simply going to say I've got a lot of angelic energy that seems to be all around me right now. No, and they are making my blonde hair. Yeah, it looks blonde. It's not. It's making it glow and radiating all this energy. It doesn't mean that, that the window next to me isn't helping. It's a beautiful day, folks. Get outside after our podcast, of course.
Of course. No, you have really good lighting in that room, actually.
I do. I like the lighting in this room until it gets so bright that I can't see when I'm doing Zoom sessions. And then I'm constantly moving the screen like this.
And therein lies our greater issues sometimes.
Exactly. But it's all good. We make it good. So I know folks...
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I know, folks, we went all around town on grief. We don't want you to feel that we don't appreciate your grief. We know that it's real. We know that grief is powerful. We know that grief comes to us to help us grow as well. And sometimes we do have to go through the fire to be able to get on the other side of it. So your grief matters. It's important. We just don't want you to be grieving for this short lifetime that we're in. That's the most important thing.
Well, Terri, once again, you're an incredible person, and I love talking to you about stuff like this. It's just, it's a reality of what we got going on in the world sometimes, and the energy's been collectively kind of heavy lately. So I'm glad that we got into this.
Well, and truthfully, I do these podcasts with Sterling because she's just so damn good for my ego. So
the one I don't ever see you have. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, I try not to. We all have egos. It's part of our human makeup. I try hard not to. Or if I have moments of strong ego, I try to keep it to myself. I go in my room, I shut the door and turn my light on, right?
Yeah. Like, I'm pissed. No,
I've done that a few times. I'm just as human as everyone. But, if you lead with love and then you come at it with wisdom, you can't go wrong.
It seems to be a
you may not always
formula.
be right, but you can't be wrong.
Well, yeah, actually, that is you're trying.
Right. Hey, participation. What did we say? Showing up is, half the battle. It's hard to show up sometimes.
That sometimes is the biggest battle ever.
Yes.
Yeah, but it is.
It is half the battle.
The cost of not doing it is your dreams. So we got to figure out what's worth what.
Well, it is your dreams. It's your admirations, the things that make you you. We're all in discovery mode. Every day I wake up and sometimes I find good things out about myself and sometimes I find bad things about myself. But the bottom line is every day is growing and knowing. That's why we say that. We come to this world with a plan. And hopefully all of our plans have a little bit of consistencies in them. We want to evolve, right? We want to evolve. Sometimes we get caught up and we get stuck and stagnant, but our goal, I would say for everyone, to speak for humanity, hopefully, is we want to evolve.
100%. Well, again, like even if you don't want that, the other option is you're not going to see a lot of change. And I think that's pretty staggering sometimes too, is there can be no grief in a person and they can just be stagnant, and it kind of is registering the same in energy.
Yes.
Which is interesting.
Exactly. This is a big, beautiful world we live in. And I'm not a fool. I know that we've got pain and sorrow and chaos and trials and tribulations everywhere we look. The bottom line is you've got to take your little place of it, and you've got to make it good for you. And I'm not saying, oh, let's be selfish and self-centered, but when you're in a good place, everybody you come into contact with is going to get a little of that. They're going to get a little of that feedback. And because they will share in it, it's just it's the best thing to be able to share.
Well, that's a really low effort charity sometimes too.
I like that. That's right. You don't have to take your wallet out.
But you don't have to, you're just doing you, hopefully.
Right. And people, for those that are wondering about, gosh, well, what more of grief? As a life coach, we do touch and broach that subject quite often. We do a lot of shadow work in some of my my structured classes and my one-on-ones and my mentorship programs. So there is a format, there is a process. Those that have done this work with me know that I'm the proverbial backpack. We talk a lot about the backpack. What are you loading yours up with today? Do you want feathers, which is the good stuff, or do you want stones that are not so great? It's up to you.
Amen. Well, it looks like we have done it.
Oh my gosh, or as Bruce would say, good Lord, I think we've done it.
He's been chatty regardless today.
Oh my gosh, I don't need to mess with my hair.
I
got
know.
Me all focused on my blonde hair.
Well, I love you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
I love you so much. What a wonderful day to be alive, isn't it?
I think so too. And it's just real quick, one last question, as talking about like the universe and heavy energy. That the eclipse, the internet is going wild about it, and everyone's talking about we are in the end of days. They're talking about that this is a sign that this is and people are coming up with some really, really big and dense conspiracy theories about, and I love a good conspiracy theory, this.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
It does feel a little much.
Juicy. Yeah.
And it is weird when the governments are reinforcing some weird stuff around the time.
Yes.
But people are talking about big blackouts. They're talking about a surge from the sun. They're talking about a financial crisis on April 8th. It's like there's a lot of people putting a lot of stuff on this. What are your thoughts on that?
And again, I'm not going to break the hearts of the doomsdayers, okay, by saying that take it a little slow, okay, because I know that there's plenty of people out there that are, they're rolling the dice hoping it comes out as exactly what we've been hearing. I want to say I can't predict that. I wish I could. That's one of those omens that's not in my my wheelhouse. But I will say, no matter what happens, I'm going to tell you what the day before is going to look like for me, and maybe you can kind of follow suit here. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to get up panicked. I'm going to get up and I'm going to have the same cup of coffee I had the day before. And I hope to have the next day. But if I'm not here, I'm really going to enjoy the one I'm having the day before, okay? And if it's me, guys, I'm probably going to have pizza because, mushroom pizza is my thing. So I'm going to do that upright so that I'm going to have mushroom pizza. It might be my last one, but it's going to be my best one. So I'm hoping, if nothing else, that I'm going to have a great first day before that, or maybe a great last day. But I don't want you to get so hung up on it. If you really look at it, if you don't think you're going to be here, please don't go raid the store of toilet paper. You won't need it. Okay?
An excellent point.
You won't need it. If it's that bad, you won't want it. Okay?
That's so true.
So no. I'm right there with you. I'm wondering too. I think half the world's got their little glasses. It's so funny. We're so afraid this thing's going to take us out, and we're all buying glasses so we can look at it, get a better
Exactly.
glow of it.
Well, and there is something as well is, yes, we can't predict, the omen setting and all those things, but we can also recognize um energy aggregates,
Yes.
and it aggregates around events.
Yes.
And I'm just not feeling any aggregation of energy incoming. So that's where I start to get nervous about if anything's going to happen, because I'm not going to say that anything's not going to happen.
Right.
But I'm saying that I don't feel a lot of people responding to it.
I don't either.
So that lets me know I think it's going to be somewhat okay.
Now, if in fact something really drastic happens that day, something catastrophic, I'm giving you permission now. You have my authorization that you can tease me about that on the other side. You could say, Terri, seriously, yeah, I really should have been better prepared. But I'm going to tell you, up to this point, I actually have appointments that week, and it's not just Monday. So I'm going with the flow. I'm going to hope and pray for the best. But I'm not feeling any energy around it either. In fact, I keep forgetting it, and everyone keeps reminding me of it. I'm like, yeah, that's right.
I think everybody finds, I'm going to be very, very honest, it seems to me right now, and I just see a little bit of it, and so it means that there's other people who are seeing much more. I feel that there's everyone's kind of looking for the one to be knowing about a topic.
Yes.
And so this is just it's like the new news. And then everyone's like making videos about that they think this is going to happen, but it's like, it's just an opportunity. The next time there's a big event, it's going to be kind of the same thing. I feel.
Absolutely. And I was actually thinking of jumping on the bandwagon there too, Sterling. I was thinking of, for a nominal fee of $500, I would do eclipse readings the day before. And while I ate my mushroom pizza, I thought, let's get in the market, right? No.
Everybody else is.
Everybody else is. No, that's not. I'm teasing. I'm not making fun of you. I'm making fun of, well, who knows? But it reminds me of a game, and I love games. Think of it this way, and I'm not really reducing it to a game, but think of it from what I'm trying to share with you. There was a game as a child. Most of you probably played it. I don't think it was taken out of context, in the last 30, 40 years. But it was a simple game where you sit in a circle, right? And what the first person has the information. The first person has the statement, right? And this first person is going to tell the second person the statement. They're going to whisper it in their ears. Kind of like what media does, right? They splash it here, they splash it there. Then you don't hear anything more about it, and then they revise it and revamp it, and then they splash it here and splash it there. So this is like the game. We all get the information. The second person hears the information, but there's a word or two that's a little skewed, a little missing, a little uncertain. And all of a sudden now, we've got everybody in the circle, which is our world, right? That's getting a little dose, a little piece of the message, but the message has been so modified and so changed up that by the time it gets really to the loop here, to the end of the loop, nobody knows anything about what the true message was. And so we are humans. We like to look at things in the sensationalistic side, right? There's a lot to be said about that. Let's make it all bad as bad can be. But quite honestly, if what we say about the other side is true, hey, if I'm not here on the 9th, so be it. I'm
fair.
I mean,
honestly, well, I've said that before too. I'm like, listen, if there's an apocalypse, I'm dropping my cats off at someone really capable, and I'm good. I'm not gonna make it. I have no survival skills. I have no combat skills. I'm not even gonna try at this. You know what I mean? For real. Like, there are people who would apocalypse so well, and I'm just not it. I'm not gonna. I've watched the TV shows. I'm not making it.
I can hear Sterling now. It'll be one of those, you'll see the last 1 minute of the reel, if it's a movie, and she's just going, oh,
I'm like, listen,
and you're there for the long haul.
There's no way.
No.
Oh, there's no way.
And we're not making light of it, folks. For those that are like already building, resources underground just in case it happens on the eclipse day. We're not making fun of you. We're just simply saying, hey, I didn't come to this lifetime to not have a good time. I came to this lifetime to learn, to grow, to be as best I can for you, to lighten you up when you need it, collectively. And, again, the answers are, most of them are within us, but a lot of times we just, we We just don't know. So keep growing, keep knowing, and keep loving.
We'll do our best.
We do our best. That's what we do.
All righty. Well, all y'all, go ahead and comment and subscribe on our YouTube channel or follow us wherever you get your podcast. And Terri, let us know. Oh, go ahead.
Do we have a question for today?
I do not believe we do as of right now.
Then I've got a message, and I know it's for you, not you, but the you collective.
Let's go.
Sophia Sterling, because Brutus, he's a real interesting person. We'll put it that way. My spirit guide. He just says that, for you out there that are suffering and hurting inside, know that there's a resolution to it. Know that your pain has created a lot of goodness in you as well. The information that it brings to you can be very comforting if you allow it to be. Take what you know, take what you have, and share yourself with others, because others probably need you more than you can imagine. Do something good in the world and let everyone see. Thank you.
That was a beautiful message.
It's not mine, it's Brutus's.
I know. I'm
the translator. Uses
I love that.
My vocals. Good.
Oh, well, thank you, Brutus. Thank you, Terri.
Yes.
And thank you to the listeners. We love these talks, and selfishly, I get to chat up Terri every week, and so it's my favorite thing.
Sterling, you're amazing, and I couldn't imagine doing the podcast with anyone else. You're an amazing soul. You're vibrant. You're very intelligent, and you are what the world needs right now. So, amen, and thank you.
I love you. I'll see you next week.
And we'll be here.
Bye. All right, take care. I'll link to reach both of us. I'll link it all below, so we'll be good.
Absolutely, reach out.
Oh yes, of course. All right, I love you so much.
I love you so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.